Anthony Rogers-Wright. Anthony Karefa Rogers-Wright is an international climate and environmental liberation advocate, a racial justice practitioner, and a writer and policy expert. He's a proud and active member of the Black Alliance for Peace and the Movement for Black Lives. He has a radio show program called Full Spectrum with Anthony Rogers-Wright, which airs on the Mighty WPFW network every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Welcome, Anthony. And to lead the
Thank you.
conversation with Anthony is our very own Perri PK McCary. Perri PK McCary is a Houston artist, educator, social activist who works tirelessly to cultivate relationships across racial, gender, generational, and cultural aisles. PK is a founding member of United Religions Initiative. She is the author of 9 books, starting with her acclaimed Black Bible Chronicles series. PK is the co-founder of Think Peace International Education Media Network for Peace Activists, and she is the founder of the Sankofa Initiative 21st Century and serves on the Houston Climate Movement Council as our resident storyteller, artist, historian, and so much more. And with that, I am going to turn it over to PK. Remember, just raise a hand, you have questions or comments, and we'll see how it flows, okay? Thank you.
Well, good evening to everybody, and I've been excited about this. Anthony came to my site with Cornell West. We have a mutual friend in him, and also there's a connection. I'm part of the Pacifica Foundation, and so is he with WPFW. So, Anthony, welcome. Wish you were in Houston with us. It is time to do what is right.
Yes,
How are
ma'am.
you?
Yes, ma'am. It's always great to be in your presence, better physically than virtually, but thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's start with this because our conversation right now is generational. I'm an old lady, and you still are a young man. But the work that you do, and the work that my relationship with Jamie, the work that the people behind me are doing is part, for me, the Sankofa Initiative. And the Sankofa means to go back and fetch it. It doesn't mean that what we did in the past was any good or that it was all wrong and there was nothing right about it. But it is about the fact that the more things change, the more they stay the same. How much of history um, impacts the work that you do? That's number one. And the second thing is how can we bridge these gaps better when it comes to climate?
I love both of those as an opening salvo. I'll start definitely with the question on history. Building off of Sankofa, and one of my favorite quotes comes from Samuel Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, who said, "His history may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes." And I think that with there was some discussion going on before we started our conversation about data centers, and we see history repeating itself with data centers. Where are they being situated? Even when we're talking about producing their own power, we know that the power that's being produced primarily. I was just speaking not too long ago to my dear brother Justin Pearson, who's fighting them in Memphis while he's running for Congress, by the way. That brother has a lot of energy. And we were talking about when I was there, all these gas-fired turbines. And at one point, an elder came and tapped me on the shoulder and was asking me if I was okay. And I was like, "What are you talking about? I feel fine." And then she kind of showed me my face on her phone, and it just was like blowing up just because of all the exposure to the methane. I was having an allergic reaction, and had to go back in the bus and get out of there. So if it's not pipelines in Black, Brown, Indigenous communities, then it's data centers and the things that's needed to power data centers. So we're seeing the history repeat itself. With data centers, though, it's what I like to call the Frankenstein monster of environmental racism because you are merging big oil with big tech and the military industrial complex, three entities which have not been good to our people throughout history. So, history is definitely rhyming in that sense. And it's more intense because when we talk about history, we also have to, and we're talking about climate, environmental racism, environmental injustices, we're also talking about cumulative impacts as well, right? So everything that is being
Amen.
yeah, right. I mean, y'all in Houston, there's nothing that I can tell you. There's nothing that I can tell. Y'all are in an artery of both global capitalism and the fossil fuel industry at once. I believe when I saw the Paras family from Tejas in Memphis some months ago, they were talking about ridiculous numbers of data centers in Texas. Like it almost seemed like hyperbole. And then, Mrs. Powers gave me that look when I was like, "Are you sure about that number?" And she was like, "Yeah, of course I'm sure about that number. I have no reason to lie to you." We're seeing that history repeat itself. I would say that the thing that makes it even more dangerous now, and I'll send Jamie this article that I have coming out tomorrow with a Black Agenda report regarding the removal of the EPA's endangerment finding. This is a very, very big deal for people who live in Houston, for people who live in environmental justice communities in Houston, because two things have happened with this president's EPA in succession. One, just 2 weeks ago, we have been told now that the value of our life is $0, right? That's the first thing that EPA did. And then by removing the endangerment finding, they have basically said these emissions are going to essentially be unregulated, which means that it's going to be an increased assault on the public health of people deemed to be worth $0. You add AI into the mix. And what has essentially happened, Mama PK, is that we have become a collective surplus population in which they are trying to basically make human labor not only expendable, but obsolete. Once you become a surplus population, as Black people, we understand this. There's really three strata of how to strategy, I should say, of how to deal with this. Mass incarceration, allow the capture of some of us. I won't say any names, but many of them are on CNN, or were on CNN. People like that capture us and put us in elements of privilege or petty bourgeois, and then the third is just straight up to get rid of us, and this is what we're seeing now. It's what we have seen in the past as well, vis-a-vis Reconstruction. When our labor no longer had value, we became a surplus population as Black people. So and then to your second question about bridging the gaps, I would say that that comes down to making the connections. We'll go back to the data center AI discussion. It's not necessarily just about automation. We also have to make the connections between resource extraction and increased militarism vis-a-vis surveillance, right? The data center big tech companies, Mama PK, have said the loud part out louder for us when they literally are proposing something called Project Suncatcher, which is to operate data centers in space. In space, because what they have basically admitted is that there are not enough natural resources on Earth to allow these things to run. So you put them in space where you don't have to use any water to cool them because it's pretty cold and out of space while you're harnessing the sun. And the gaps that we're also bridging is that rather than harnessing the sun to power our homes, to power our businesses, they would rather power data centers. So again, we're bridging the gaps of where we fit in the social order of racial capitalism, of neoliberalism. And when we bridge those gaps, where it leads us is to the fact that we are becoming more and more expendable, and capital is just going to keep accumulating. And it is made the signal, Mama PK, that it is now ready to even sacrifice a greater number of white people, which is why the article that's coming out tomorrow is entitled "How Removing the Endangerment Finding Exposes the lie of Trump populism and garnishes the wages of whiteness," because the signal has been set. Your lives are worth $0. Your public health means nothing to us because we're not going to regulate the things that will make you sick, right? And we therefore are ready to sacrifice a number of white people in order to keep capital going, even middle class, upper middle class white people, Mama TK, simply because there's no one left to extract from. Like that's it. We have to extract from someone. Poor working class people of all races, but especially Black, brown, indigenous people, we have nothing to left to give them. Labor, money, and otherwise. They're gentrifying our neighborhoods. It is a very, very dangerous time for that reason. So that's bridging the gaps based on the history of being poor and oppressed people in a settler colonial nation.
I want to include the rest of us in this, but I do want to say this. You know, restorative justice is something that people don't really identify as blueprint from the Sankofa, going back and fetching it, on how we stop doing harm. And that harm is going to destroy the planet. No hands if buts about it. You can't debate a lie. So it takes words like the articles like you're writing to get to the people because it's serious. We've got to know. I'm a Black woman, and a Black woman has the burden on her shoulders.
Yeah, yes,
So,
ma'am. Yes, yes. I mean, healing is extremely important, whether we're calling it restorative justice or transformative justice. I mean, at the end of the day, we have two things that we have to save. We have to save the only planet that we know that can sustain life, and in the process of doing that, Mama PK, we've got to save our humanity. Things probably are going to get a bit worse. That's how it works. It's always darkest before the dawn. If we don't retain our humanity through healing, it'll get worse even still, because that is essentially, if what better way to get rid of a surplus population than to have them kill each other off, right? Where we don't even see each other's humanity anymore. And this is especially true when we're talking about data centers because of what it uses a lot of: water. Water, water, water. And as my award-winning, Holocaust surviving environmental professor, economics professor in college used to say, and this, I guess I'm aging myself, Jamie, a little bit. This was during the height of the Iraq War. She said, if you think that wars over oil are bad, wait till you see wars over water. That is where there will just, you will not even see the person as a human if they are in the way of a resource that is very, very scarce and that you need to survive. So absolutely on transformative and restorative justice as a function of restoring our collective humanity. If we don't do that quickly, we have already lost the climate fight.
already, we have work to do. Does anybody want to add to this? I don't want to leave them out of this because I could talk with you all day and all night, Anthony, and we still would have a lot to
Yes,
talk
ma'am.
about the next day.
Yeah, just if
So,
you want to say something, go ahead and raise your hand, and in the break somewhere it's called on, Deb can go ahead and let them know, and you can just unmute, or y'all can just keep talking until somebody raises their hands.
well, I'm game to to keep talking because this is the bridge we're talking about, Anthony. This is the way we need to start doing these things intentionally, not performance, but actually getting the work done because we are getting that data and the information that we need to counter it. Project Restorative Justice, which is what I'm doing here in Houston, I want to start beta testing the deck of cards that I do to have these conversations where people can hear one another and make themselves involved with one another. I don't listen to some podcasts because you cannot debate a lie. You
No,
can't.
that's right. That's right.
And
I
there's
mean,
no equality. There's no equal attitude that this lie is the same as the truth. Not my truth, the truth.
no,
Mhm.
that's right. That's right. I mean, I think that, the idea of beta testing and experimentation is so important for many of us, especially who work in nonprofit spaces. Unfortunately, our nonprofit sector is very, very intransigent and sometimes too dogmatic. You hear about theories of change, and there's no experimentation. What's so funny to me about that is that a lot of these folk who are in nonprofit spaces herald the great Adrienne Marie Brown, and everyone should herald Adrienne Marie Brown, who brought us and to the world the idea of emergent strategies and emergent strategy, excuse me. And one of her, if you will, disciples, the great Andrea Ritchie, who wrote an incredible book, actually have it right here, Practicing New Worlds, speaks to your point, Mama PK. And one of the things that she says is, in movement terms, emergent strategies translates to accurately assessing current conditions, correctly predicting the impact of our efforts to change them, and then having the power to preserve the changes that we make. And I think that is only possible through beta testing. I think that's only possible, through experimentation. And when you've reached a point in human history that we have now, late stage capitalism, why the hell wouldn't we experiment? There's nothing left to lose except our imagination. And as the author Amitav Ghosh once said, the climate crisis is a crisis of imagination. And I think that, so please beta test, and I will happily be one of your willing beta testers.
I will send you a deck of cards in the facilitator's book. Ever since the MLK Center burned down, and it didn't burn down, they wanted the dirt, so they raised it. History, the first MLK Center in the nation where Daddy King came and gave us his blessings. It's gone. It's gone. And that's like an obituary that gets told and then somebody throws it away. So right now, I'd like Pastor Deb, we are the Sankofa, not just because we're older or even wiser, but that is our purpose because we have information that you don't have. And it's going to take all of us to figure out how we work with one another. If we can't work with one another, whatever the rest of these folks are doing, it's going to trample us. And
Okay, that's
I,
so beautiful. We've got three people that want to jump in. Can we hear from Michael and then
sure.
Jamie, Nicole, and Paige
Okay, great,
to
great.
respond to you? Go ahead, Michael.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Yeah, great conversation, and definitely, I love to. Um, I just love this idea of constant push against the machine, I would say. But one thing that I just would be remiss if I didn't highlight is that in these spaces, there isn't enough conversation about the physical and mental well-being of folks. And I think that conversation has to be constantly embedded within the conversations of fight here, fight there, because people are literally getting sick. People are literally stressing out, fighting against capitalism, and I wonder sometimes if the machine is immune to any of the types of fights that grassroots puts up, right? So it's this thing of from a biomimicry standpoint, is the way we do things, does it actually work? And I also think about, my elder fraternity brother, W.B. Du Bois, who at the end of the day, he went to Ghana. He left. And and so it just, lately I've really been thinking about, you know, the just um, the holistic conversation around all of this. Because again, I love boxing, but they're 12 rounds for a minute, for a reason, I should say. And when I see, folks sort of burning out, it is concerning. So how do we rest and then get back in the fight? But also, how do we think um, in a way where we could do different strategies to begin to move the needle in different ways? I'll stop there. I'll land this plane. Thank you.
No, I think it's really, really important as someone who has to be reminded, to rest all the time. I mean, we live in a system where we're basically told to keep going until you drop, right? Where our labor is literally extracted from us, even in, more utopian spaces. And Michael, the point that you made is really, really important because the way that the system is, even if workers, if we wanted to do this massive general strike uprising, we're too tired, and they know that, they know that people, as Mama PK was saying, who are sick, who are tired, and cannot rise up as the masses, right? I mean, we outnumber these folk. They're called the 1% or the 5% for a reason. Yet, we work all day. You get home, you've got to maybe do some child care, whether it's your biological children or not, or community care for your elders and whatnot. And it's very, very exhausting. This is where we, though, have to kind of look at ourselves and ask ourselves about what the great Pan-Africanist Amilcar Cabral referred to as the battle against our internal weaknesses. And it's an okay thing, to lift them up as internal weaknesses, because if we're just replicating a system that is killing us, what are we doing? And being programmed is a hell of a thing. I'm in my mid 40s, and as Jamie knows, I always refer to myself as a recovering patriarch, and I will for the rest of my life, because for the 40 plus years before I really started doing the work, I was programmed. It's like the Matrix, for those of you who have seen that movie. You're conditioned. So I think that it goes back to what Mama PK said about beta testing. It goes back to experimentation. When we talk about mutual aid, we never talk about mutual aid, it seems, in the context of labor, right? It's usually just in like sort of like material things like food and water and getting medicine to people, and those are very, very important. I don't want to be reductive of that, but also a cooperative lens to mutual aid, which means like, all right, Jamie can't work today for whatever reason. Jamie needs a mental health day. Jamie just wants to go do art, just because, that's what Jamie needs to do. Someone is going to pick something up to make sure that our community system doesn't fall apart. And that's how it has to, that how it has to be, especially when we get to the point when we want to start, and we're going to probably have to get there anyway, growing our own food, tending our own crops. If we don't have a system in place that is regenerative, right? And regenerative means that, if one element of it, like of the ecosystem, has to take a rest, like soil, for instance, the whole system doesn't collapse. What will collapse is, and we're seeing that, y'all are in Texas, I don't need to tell you, the way that y'all treat your soil for a state that depends on agriculture is just madness, right? You have to let soil rest. And that's why I do really love the emergent strategy model. But I definitely don't have all the answers, and I'm a bit of a hypocrite. And Gina, don't worry about it. I'm like Mama PK. I'm a West African from Brooklyn, so I'll keep going. Speaking of like rest is resistance until I stop,
Oh.
until
Okay,
I
we've
drop it.
got
I
Don't
Jamie
just
struggle.
let
Nicole.
me, yeah, let me just jump in real quick
Yeah,
and do
sorry,
a
Jamie. Yeah.
time check.
Who's
We're out of
next?
time. So, but what that means, that doesn't mean we have to get off the phone. But it would push into any announcements and leaving with one word. That's fine. If you have any announcements or flyers or anything like that that you want to put into the chat, we'll send it out with the notes to those who've attended. And Other than that, those who would like to stay and conversate a little bit more, as Anthony is available, yes, I don't know.
Oh,
Okay, and then I will hand it back. And Deb, you were calling on.
okay. Jamie, we got Jamie, Nicole, and Paige, and then Kayla.
For the sake of time, I was going to relinquish my question so that others could ask theirs.
Go ahead.
We
Okay.
want to hear from you,
Okay.
Jamie.
And so, excuse my, I think I have the least amount of experience in environmental issues, but I had this question as we were having this conversation. My background is that I have multiple chronic illnesses. I started a nonprofit to help the BIPOC community with chronic illnesses, and I'm also on the board of a federally qualified health center here in Houston, Texas. I recently went to the Texas Association of Community Health Centers conference. And so as you were speaking, I was just thinking back to when I was there and the amount of importance that they put on AI as the function of what we do and our long-term sustainability. I was somewhat taken back that they thought it was so important to incorporate it into the week 3 different times. Because of the work that we do in the communities that we served, those people who were there are very much aware of the impact of the data centers on the communities that they serve, but they also are aware of the funding cuts, the personnel cuts, and all of the other things that have been going on, especially with the change of the administration. So I'm just wondering, because the question came up as a round table at the end of the presentations, how do we reconcile that? You're telling us that if we don't go to AI, our community health centers, which benefit the community so much, are going to be shut down. So get on board or get out. But at the same time, if we do get on board, that's also going to have a detrimental impact to our communities. It's sort of like, mobile health centers. You're contributing more pollution to the air, but if you don't have the mobile health center, there are going to be some communities and some people who won't be able to reach you. So the lesser of two evils, if you will. And at the pace we're going with AI, it's moving so fast. Again, I'm in the health space. Every post on my timeline is about AI, or you're not going to be able to keep up with the pace of where we're going right now in the medical field. So I just wanted to ask if that has been a conversation, and what do we say and what do we do?
Yeah, Jamie, Nicole, it is the conversation right now. I'm gonna send my dear sister Jamie a interview that was just done with an AI safety engineer who just quit with dire warnings, about, like, and just listen to this brother speak, for himself. Speaking of them as principals, we'll let this brother speak for himself. And I don't think we have the solutions, because unfortunately there's a strata of us, who are just consumers, and think this is a good thing. We have tried to make resource appeals to people, like when you're using ChatGPT, this is how much water you're using. But we have a hard time as humans who live in a wealthy country in the heart of empire of giving things up. We have a hard time giving up fossil fuels. We have a hard time giving up bad habits, and we have a hard time giving up, this idea that we need, this technology. Where I would argue, like, what more do we really need? And they're trying to answer that question for us. Um, I would
Can
say,
I interrupt just for one
yes, of
second,
course.
Anthony? Because here's the thing. I don't have the answers, but I do believe, like Zora Neale Hurston did in Their Eyes Were Watching God, there are years that answer and years that question. We're in the period of years that answer for those who go and seek to find the answers. And you can use ChatGPT with it if you ask the right question. But at the same time, it's individual. We have got to be coalitions that look at these questions and these answers in a way, not like Project Heritage, Foundation, but what our communities did when we were not picking up bad habits from white people.
Yes, ma'am. No, absolutely. I mean, and I think, going back to your point, Jamie, I mean, we point out the contradictions, right? That's what it is. And I think that at some point, we're going to have to really ask some serious questions about this so-called AI bubble. It's inevitable. It's going to burst, and and that's the question to Mama PK's point that I'm trying to answer right now. How are we going to have social safety nets in place? Some of you look like you were around during the 2007, 2008 financial collapse. They're saying that this AI bubble bursting would be 8 times larger than that collapse. And that costs a lot of money to put us back on track. But it's a tough question, Jamie, Nicole. Let's definitely stay in touch. But like there are a lot of people who are working on that question right now. Some of them have ulterior motives, some of them have moral motives, and it's to Mama Kike's point, we're gonna have to there's not gonna be one wise, old man, especially not an old wise man, with the answer to that. It's gonna have to be a collective answer. Because you're right, it is accelerating way faster. 2 years ago, we weren't talking about this as much as we are now, and now it's every day. Like New York Times, Sunday Times. I get the Sunday Times delivered. The entire Sunday opinion section, AI, AI, AI. What are we gonna do? So, we'll answer that collectively. So, who's next? Jamie Page.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Page.
I just wanted to mention because when you were talking about transformative justice, Adrienne Marie Brown came directly to my mind. I've got 4 of her books on my desk right now. I've been studying for the last 6 months, and so her vision or this concept of emergent strategy is really all about process, right? How the micro impacts the macro, and like our personal interactions and how we manage a community meeting, and whether or not people have to raise hands or if it's an organic, like it all matters because essentially, it's whether or not we're going to be oppressors or allow oppression. Like it translates into the big scale. So I appreciate you for lifting that up. I think that this conversation and evolution to the AI and the data centers um, is upsetting, and mostly because I hear a lot of environmentalists, just sort of qualifying their use of AI, and because it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. This is really all about surveillance and weapons and targeted, overseas, operations and things. And this is really all about Palantir, and it's not about my little cartoon that I make for Facebook. But I would argue against that. I think that by normalizing this kind of like extractive excess, we're complicit in our own destruction. And so we have to be the hard line against all of this bullshit
Yep.
now, because they're
Yep.
only going to keep pushing. And if we acquiesce now, it's what? And I see people talking about site fights for these individual centers, and well, we stopped it from coming to our town. Great, they're going to move it down the road,
Yep.
right? To
Yep.
a more, to a disadvantaged community that can't organize or doesn't have the resources to fight back. And so, how do we do this systemically from the top down and kill it at the head or the root or whatever you want to say? That was all. Thank you for.
No, no, Paige, I want to build off what you said. Really important. So, one of the things that we're doing at Black Alliance for Peace, I'll send it to Jamie as soon as it's ready. It's called Getting to the Nitty Gritty. And what people don't understand is that like this can't be super hyper local. Now I know y'all have your situation with ERCOT in Texas, but a part of Texas is in my grid, right? The Southwest Power Pool. So in other words, what that means is like even if we stop data centers in Nebraska, if we're not stopping them in other states that are within our grid, we're still going to be impacted. So that calls for the need for trans-local organizing models. So that's the good news, Paige, is that most of the data center wins have not been by like national organizations, astroturfing as they do, as you know. It's been everyday people in red, more red districts, by the way, congressional districts than blue districts, just everyday people coming together and saying, no, we don't want them here. We're seeing moratoriums in red districts in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, Ohio, I mean, even Texas SB 6, which is like you got to turn off your data centers if there's an emergency on the. I mean, for Governor Abbott to sign something like that, I was like, maybe he found a little bit of Black Jesus, but it's just to say that there's a lot of local grassroots pressure, which page is why you say like see them throw this. Hey, make a cartoon of yourself out because they know that they even came up with a word for it. They're calling it techlash, right? And when Microsoft releases a blog called Community Driven AI, that's because they're shook because they've lost about $100 billion from just grassroots communities. So to the question about when they move it, it shouldn't cost a lot of money to organize a community to stop it, because it hasn't. This goes back to mutual aid. This goes back to, a mutual aid of organizing skills. I've known Jamie Lawson, oh my God, almost decade. That's how old we're getting. I believe Jamie Lawson would go to any neighborhood and whatnot and offer the mutual aid of organizing, policy, expertise. That's what it's going to take. We are about to like really be forced with a serious question. This work that we do, that we're passionate about because it's good work and it's about saving people and planet, the question becomes, would we do it for free? Like, would we do it just because we are trying to save humanity? And if we answer that question in the affirmative, we're going to stop these things. But I do think that it's important just to get to Kaylin, it's important to understand, yes, we love hyper local. We do. It's hyper local. It's not hyper local or in the case of data centers, it's hyper local and people do need to get a bit more versed in what their grid is. Again, you lot in Texas have a unique situation, but everything in Texas is a unique situation, I found. So, how do we get that translocal organizing models into play? I will send Jamie resources on translocal organizing as well. It's a great thing because it calls for people being visit assemblies, all the things that we like. Emergent strategy, that it's you will love if you love emergent strategy, you will love translocal organizing. I guarantee it. All right, Kaylin, what's up?
Hi, hi, hi. Let me lower my hand real quick. This is my first time here. And I'm probably the youngest person here, and I guess the least well-read with regard to sustainability. But nonetheless, I found what you said very interesting. I liked what you said about number one, the removal of the EPA endangerment finding, right? Effectively, like I guess cutting the leg of the EPA, right? Their ability to regulate uh carbon emissions, methane, and so on. Um, and additionally, I find the like idea of sun data centers pretty dumb. Um, Mainly, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that, like cosmic rays from the sun, flipping bits, um,
Science fiction,
late
right? Almost.
network latency. So, I mean, I don't really understand that whole idea, but um, I
Well,
guess
neither do they,
people out
Kaylin.
there,
Yeah, neither do they.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I guess with regard to data centers, I'm sort of split because so I graduated from I guess UT Austin, I guess like 2 months ago in computer science, right? And I guess this morning I just deployed like a website, on Google Cloud. So it's like I understand the sort of negative effects of, AI data center training, the amount of energy that goes into it that could be used to, I don't know, build a solar farm to power like a community or something. But I also think there's a lot of utility, not with like these major data centers, but like I'm a big fan of microgrids, right? So like UT Austin campus is a microgrid. Uh,
Mhm.
all the power like circulates within there, and you could get super high efficiency and also power like you could also supply a lot of people with services in a local area. Um, and I feel like at when you have these small scale like microgrids, you could do a lot of interesting things that help people while still maintaining like high levels of efficiency, you know, use creating a lot of power, not wasting a lot of it, and also giving the people within that local area something. So that's sort of how I feel with regard to data centers. And then at AI, I feel like, you know, right now we're in America, right? The big thing here is economies of scale. And there's such an interest in, making things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And in that process, you end up building a sort of a society interested in devaluing labor. If that makes sense. And I think AI plays into this, you know, pretty well, right? Not only devaluing, I guess, physical labor, but now even works of the mind, right? Art, writing. I'm not going to read your email. The AI can summarize it. Um, and so, yeah, I just think there's a lot of things going on at the moment. And I was wondering if you, I was wondering if you thought there was such a thing as, too much comfort or, too much convenience. Because I think that also plays into the climate crisis that we live in right now, right? Comfort, convenience, um, and the production of goods,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think many of us are too comfortable. I mean, I'm blessed to do a lot of work in the global South, specifically Colombia. And what my mentor, the great Jean Mubaraka, always reminds me is that we, as Afro-descendant people, as African people, in the nucleus of the cell of empire, right? We have specific responsibilities and duties for our siblings. I have family in Sierra Leone as I have family in Colombia. There's a specific responsibility because we also do have to acknowledge like some of the privileges, like even those of us, I mean, you're in the Gulf South. I mean, the Gulf South is the externality waste dump of the United States of America. That's what it is. There's a moniker of a place called Cancer Alley. That's all you need to know. Um, and my thing is like, how is there still a place in the United States of America called Cancer Alley? Well, it goes back to what Frederick Douglass said. Like the amount of oppression is what the people are, the masses will put up with, and I think that there is that comfort, level. I have to talk to Jamie about a friend who I'm not going to name, on this call, who does this work, but I think got like a little too comfortable with it and has kind of become an element of controlled opposition now. Like we're doing a fossil fuel conference in Colombia. And they were like, I can come as long as you fly me and five of my kids down with, and I was like, the travel budget is not that much, but that comfort level of thinking that that's a principled request, speaks to your point. Now, I want to talk about like sort of like AI and resource extraction. I mean, look, farming itself is a good thing. Industrial farming is not a good thing, right?
mhm.
And so that's where, we have to think about it because this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. Anyone that thinks you can have unlimited growth on a planet with limited resources is either a madman or an economist. And you like that page, right? And that's just, the bottom line. I mean, I would love to believe that if the condition of our state of our consciousness would allow be like, hey, there's got to be limits, there's got to be guardrails that could work. I would like to believe that, but when I see the wealthiest corporation in the world, Amazon, $1 trillion corporation, saying we're going to lay off 30,000 people, not because we don't have enough money, but because we don't need them anymore because of AI.
Hmm.
That's where I start to get a little concerned. And Caitlin, last thing I'll say, it's ironic, right? And you probably know this, that some of the biggest supporters right now of universal basic income are big tech people, Elon
Hmm.
Musk, Sam Altman. It's not because it's out of benevolence. It's because they know that if they suck all of our labor away from us and we become obsolete, they're basically trying to prevent a violent uprising. That's what they're trying to prevent with UBI. And it goes back to Mama PK's point, though. But like, if they can't bribe us with universal basic income, they'll just keep making us sicker, right? They'll keep making us work longer hours, so we don't literally have the energy for a massive violent uprising. At the same time, you just graduated from university, which is a achievement that no one will ever be able to take away from you. and I don't want to damper on what you got your degree in. What I would say is, like watch Star Wars. The dark side is seductive, and use your powers for the Jedi. Use your powers for the Jedi, please, because Jamie and I have seen too many people lost to the Sith, and we want to retain you in our camp.
Thank
You
you,
need to,
Anthony.
I
So,
want you
oh,
to come visit me. I want you to, Caleb.
yes, come see us. Or we could go see him in the birthplace of Malcolm X, if you don't
Mm.
mind me saying. I just think that's cool. I didn't know that until
Oh, no, no, Jamie, and Mama PK is going to appreciate this. And I get in trouble with some of our more non-radical and liberal black folk here who are doing horrible things in the name of Malcolm. Malcolm Little was born in Omaha. Malcolm X was born in prison, and El Haj Malik El Shabazz was born in Saudi
Born
Arabia.
in Mecca. Mecca. Yeah. I had a young man that I mentored from Jordan. We had a contest, a photo contest called 1,000 Kalima. And, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We had 200 and something um, entries, and the King of Jordan created Interfaith Harmony Week when we launched it. And his father's photographer was one of our judges. I say all that just to give you a sense of I met this young man and spent a couple hours with him in Jordan, and it turned into an 80,000 Skype messages and a 200 um, pictures from 5 continents. So it's still around. I say that always to say is that he had a problem with the fact that he would, who was a Muslim, along with the Jewish people from Israel, the people that were Muslim were set in another room. And he called me on Skype and he said, I don't want any Jewish applications. I'm going to throw them all away. And I said, why would you do that? You've already accepted them. And he told me what happened. And I tried to say to him, you're getting ready to launch something really, really important. But you're saying that you're ready to die for your cause. And in dying for your cause, your legacy is going to be all gone. And he said, Mama PK, see, I'm Malcolm X and you're Martin Luther King. Now, this is a young man from Jordan, okay? And I said, which Malcolm? And Anthony, you just said, how many Malcolms were there, right? Malcolm in prison, Malcolm as a child when he just said what he wanted to be and his teacher. I mean, all of those. And we ended up having the best contest that we still have. He has that legacy. And he has 2 little boys that I consider my grandchildren in Jordan. He's got his own business. He's doing the kinds of things that make a difference. And I think that we have to preserve those stories so that people know that it's possible for us to do this. I'm a seed planted by the waters. I shall not be moved.
thank you, Mama PK. So it is getting later and
Yes,
people are
yes,
dropping off, and I also want to respect Anthony and his family. So
my
I just
pleasure.
wanted, if it's okay with you, to ask for any quick burning desires. I know that this was sort of a different experience. So first, Samantha, I just want to give you the opportunity, and you totally don't have to talk or ask any questions, but if you'd like to say hi, or you have a question for Anthony, please go ahead. Um, Gina, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I'm really enjoying this conversation, but I'm getting tired. It's been a long
We'll
Okay.
day.
do it again. We'll do it
All
again.
right. We'll
Yeah.
do it again. And then last, it seemed Paige that you there was a lot of response in the conversation. Just wanted to give you one last chance. If you had any response or anything with Anthony, we'll definitely connect y'all.
No,
Yeah,
I did my best to take all of the comments from the chat and put them in the notes. So I appreciate everybody's great contributions. Thank you all.
great.
And
And Jamie, I'll
Kaylin,
get you those resources I promised as well.
thank you. And Kaylin, I'm so glad you're here. I hope you stay connected with us because this is about you.
Yeah,
You know what I
sure.
mean? So it'd be good if you were here, the conversation, right? You know, Anthony, thank you so much. It's always so wonderful. Like Anthony, I told him, can I just talk to you for a couple minutes real quick? He knows it's hard to just have a couple minute talk. You know,
Yep.
there's so much to cover and it's wonderful.
Yep.
PK, thank you so much
No
for
problem,
being
PK.
you and leading the conversation. And on the way out, just because we remembered Jesse Jackson earlier, I just want to give a shout out to Asada Shakur, who went home to join her baby boy Tupac.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the fight. Yeah.
All right, y'all.
All right. Y'all have a great night. Bye.